Before we get started, one more thing. If you want to get any PE gear, be sure to check out TotalManShop.com. That is TotalManShop.com. And use the promo code MHS2020. Promo code is MHS2020 and get 12% off. Be sure to check out their wide variety of all kinds of good quality PE equipment. All right? And that's promo code MHS2020 for 12% off. And the website, once again, is TotalManShop.com. What is going on, gentlemen? Welcome to another episode here at the Masculine Health Solutions podcast. And today what I wanted to really talk about was the difference between somebody that's just jerking off and just masturbating versus actually edging, right? And this one came up after, a guy that I've been working with and I've just been talking to, he told me, he's like, oh man, I'm ending every session. I'm just, I'm getting my edging in, right? And I'm like, oh, really? That's, I was actually happy. I'm like, that's fantastic. You got to make sure that, go for that good pump right when you're done. Unfortunately, though, he told me that every single time he was, done his sessions, he was basically just jerking off. He would just bust nut, and that concluded his program. And like I've said before, and I've mentioned it to you guys on previous occasions and in other episodes, how I feel it's important to just kind of retain that semen. And the more I look into semen retention, the more it makes sense, right? And that's where the whole no fat movement is coming to play. And it's just something that I think is unavoidable. The more you just kind of jerk off to porn, the more you are just creating a connection with the screen. And I let him know, I'm like, hey man, if I was you, I'd focus more on getting the most out of edging, not masturbating. Because if you're just straight up just jerking off, it's not only is it kind of detrimental because, he told me he wasn't really making gains as far as how long he was able to last. And that's kind of the one thing that I always talk about with you guys here. It's all about progressive overload, right? You want to make sure that you can go longer than you did last time. If you do not, then what are you really doing? And it's not good, because you're pretty much just at square one and you're going to be going around in a circle. However, he did tell me that, as far as his PE went, he was making gains, and he did tell me that, he was hanging, his flaccid was hanging lower. He did say that he made a little bit of length gains and that his girth had improved. So I'm like, that's awesome. That's beneficial. Obviously I don't want to promote porn use, but hey, you know what? To each their own, and whoever wants to do whatever they want to do, and if it's behind closed doors and you're not hurting anybody, hey, to each their own, man. Right. But I found it for myself that it was not something that was good, and it's not something that's advantageous, and just not something that I want to be doing at this point in my life. I want to obviously have a deeper connection with my wife, and I want to make sure that I give her all of my nuts. That's kind of a rule that I created for myself, and it did help me sexually, right? Because I found that when she is the only person that is going to receive my semen or my love juice, then obviously, it's almost like I rewired my brain to just say, nah, this does not release unless it's going in there. Right. And I honestly feel that it was almost like a rewiring. Like it almost just told my brain, this is the way that it's going to go down from now on. And it's been easier and easier to edge. Right. So that's one thing that I kind of felt like maybe I was being unclear about, or maybe, he wasn't 100% sure, but it was something that I could definitely talk about, and something that I'm going to discuss here. So like I said before, and like I alluded to before, progressive overload, guys, you got to set a timer. You got to look at yourself like, hey, I'm trying to level up here. How can I improve this exercise that I'm doing? And how can I get the most out of this exercise? Because if I'm just doing it, to pass the time, and then, just busting nut, it's psychologically not the greatest. You should check out Andrew Huberman, who talks about that. Neurologist who's, he talks about how the brain is actually affected from, overstimulating it. And side note, it's not just porn watching, guys. It's more than that. You think about Netflix, right? And I've kind of just gone on Netflix fast, and I turned it on the other day, and I'm like, man, this is just too much for me now. Like, man, it's a little bit too much. I'd said, hey, I'm gonna check out the Squid Game, see what it's all about. You know, and I expected there to be all kinds of violence, a whole bunch of Illuminati symbolism, a whole bunch of weird things involved. And the more I watched it, and then I checked out some other shows, there was one about the dude that made District 9 where he had some other like dystopian future. And I just realized, I'm like, man, they are overstimulating us pretty much on every front, man. Whether it's porn, whether it's violence, whether it's sex, drugs, and alcohol and all that crazy stuff, But it almost seems like it's almost like these screens are just overstimulating us. And, my son downloaded TikTok and, I scrolled down once. And next thing you know, it was 30 minutes. I'm like, man, has it been this long? What I'm trying to say, guys, is that all the stuff that you see on the screens is meant to overstimulate your brain. Now, you think about porn, and porn is basically tricking your brain into thinking like, yo, you're a badass, man. You just got in bed with about 40 chicks in less than 3 minutes flat, and they all loved it and they all loved you. However, that is not the case. And we all know that, deep down, we all know that. However, we do know that as men, you need to release that stress, man. There are different ways that you can recycle that sexual energy and transmute into something better, right? But at the same time, guys, I am a man just like all of you guys, man. And as a dude, I'll tell you, we're wired and that we need to release that love juice every now and again. And if you don't, obviously, it can create stress. And if it's not harnessed properly, you see a lot of dudes that are sexually frustrated, and you see the terrible outcomes of what happens to these guys, right? And it's pretty sad. And a lot of that just comes down to the fact that they're sexually frustrated. They blame it on women. However, it is never the woman's fault, man. You got to up your game. And it's a tough pill to swallow, but it's also one that I think we as men should always focus on. I think we should always focus on the fact that we need to develop ourselves. Everybody talks about the strongest version of yourself. I think it's about the best version of ourselves in every area of our lives. It's more than just strength. And obviously for me, I believe in physical strength. I believe in physical development, but I also believe in mental development, and I also believe in spiritual development. And I think that if we're able to harness our sexual energy, then boom, man, like you pretty much, what it teaches you is that you are able to control yourself in one of the most difficult things that exists, and that is sex, man. And if you're able to do that, it opens the doors to so many different other things, and it gives you this confidence that you realize like, hey, man, I'm able to conquer quite a bit, man. I got this power within me. And it is extremely rewarding. And anybody that's been able to do it, or anybody that's gone down the no-fap route will tell you, man, boosting confidence, more energy, you feel stronger at the gym, all these different things, and mentally you're more focused, you're more dialed in. And it's almost like you just take that energy and it can help to create a whole bunch of different things. I mean, sexual energy is about creation. Think about it, man. You bust a nut, you can create a life. That's pretty significant, to say the least, man, to say the least. So again, and to just bring that back to the point, edging versus masturbation, they are not one and the same. So let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to edging, and let's talk about how we can get better at edging and how to develop ourselves and our skills so that we can last longer. And that being said, there are other benefits to edging more than just lasting longer. But for most of us, we're doing this from a stamina perspective, right? So first off, for myself, I do not think that porn is good. I do not think it is conducive. And I think you're overstimulating your brain. And it can cause all kinds of ramifications in the future. If you want to learn more about that, check out Andrew Huberman. He has a wicked talk. I believe he was on the Mind Pump, or no, on Mark Bell's Strength Project, I think. And he's been on other podcasts where he discusses it. I will add a link so you guys can watch the entire episode. And I think it was mind-blowing what he was saying, right? And how he compared it to pretty much drug use. So guys, when it comes to edging, obviously you want to stimulate yourself, right? And your goal here is to maintain your erection, and you want to get close to the point of no return. However, over time, you want to get even closer and closer and closer. But for many guys, if you feel that you're just gonna bust that nut, about a minute in, then just focus on 30 seconds, right? Let it die down, then focus on 20 seconds. Let it die down, then focus on 10 seconds. Let it die down, and maybe take a minute rest in between. And just focus on keeping it up, keeping it hard, and maintaining a pace that would be more like sex and not masturbation. What I mean by that is a lot of dudes start jerking off like they're like they're, I don't know, Michael Phelps with their hands, just trying to go as fast as possible with all kinds of energy. And the goal here is not to go as fast as possible. You want to emulate sex, right? So what I would recommend is just go at a pace that's, slower, more of a normal tempo, normal sex tempo. You don't want to go about, I don't know, like 1 second, 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, blah, blah, blah. You basically want to take your time when you're jerking it, right? It's like making love. You're gonna make love. You're not gonna be pounding it out the way they do in porn, which is also, something that's not as realistic as people may or may not know. For all you married guys, you all know it's a little bit different, right? But that being said, you want to make sure that you mind the pace, that you take it easy. You go at a pace that emulates or is pretty much the same as what it would be like to make sweet, sweet love, right? You want to take your time with that. And you want to make this whole session last for as long as possible. And going back to the whole progressive overload principle, what you want to do here is obviously, you want to get as close to the brink as possible, right? And you want to extend that erect state for as long as possible with as much stimulation as possible. And what you want to do is focus on just, upping the ante or pushing the pace, yes, I know I just talked about, it sounds oxymoronic. Let me explain myself. What I mean is that you do want to make it difficult in some way every single time you do your edging session. If you're doing it for 2 minutes and you can do it, and you can do it at a super fast pace that, may have been a challenge for you in the past. Now it's time for you to pick it up and add another minute, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And for myself, I found for myself that I was almost doing involuntary Kegels, after, like, let's say I'd done a PE workout, and then I would edge, and I'm like, whoa, and I was unable to control it, and I was focused on your normal PC Kegels, and that was leading to like a little bit of premature ejaculation. And I found that obviously it was a hindrance. It was not good. So I stopped doing, the Kegel exercise that I was doing with my P exercises. And for myself, when I was edging, I'd focus on just, controlling those involuntary Kegels that you might have. It's almost like you feel those spasms, but you can't really control it that well yet. And eventually, when you do control it, you'll be able to get dry orgasms. And when you do, what you will do is, like, let's say you'll pretty much stimulate yourself. You'll get to that brink where you feel you're going to bust a nut. And then you just, let go. And when you let go, you'll feel those contractions, and it'll be a dry orgasm, and it'll feel spectacular, right? It'll feel really, really good. And you'll get to know your body even better. What you can do is, after doing that, is do a reverse Kegel, right? And when you do that push out motion, right? You just want to just let that erection subside just a little bit, right? And then you go again. And you'll actually find that when you do this, and you feel like, you're getting close to that brink, you're getting close to the brink, you might start squeezing your anus, right? Like, a lot of guys might not realize it, but you almost get into that position where you're like, you're ready to bust that nut, and you're almost at that squeeze. And it's almost like, gotta breathe it out, man. Gotta breathe it out. Just relax. Just be mindful about, what's happening. That's another thing to look out for, right? You gotta focus on the fact that, oh man, I'm getting ready. It's like, instead of, going to full berserk mode where you're just ready to let it all out. Focus on how to just release it and just maintain yourself at a cool, collected, mindful state, physical and mental. You just got to stay cool, right? And as you stay cool, you just relax and you focus and you set your time for whatever it might be. Going back to that, trying to resist the brink of eruption. Let's say you make it 5 minutes. Next week you make it 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Week after that you make it 7 minutes, 10 minutes, right? And that's a way that you can obviously progressively overload, right? You want to add time to it. Another thing that you can do is try to slow down the time it takes for you to get to that brink of ejaculation, right? So one of the ways that you can do it, like let's say if you're a dude that busts in like let's say 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes tops, slow pace, nothing you can do, man. You're gonna bust. What I would recommend is like slow down the pace and try to get to that 2.5 minute mark, right? But and you want to make sure this is one go. So you're gonna be jerking, right? At a consistent pace. And you're gonna try to get past that 2 minute mark. And if you got to get slower and go slower just to make sure you make it a 2.5, then that's what you do, right? And you want to make sure you do it in one go. It's something that I did. It was an exercise that I practiced when I was edging, right? Where how long can I make it before I got to take a break and I get to, I get those contractions, those unwanted Kegel contractions that lead to a dry orgasm, right? Or before I got to, step off the gas because, I'm gonna fall off the edge. And I found for myself, focusing on that pace, right? And slowing down and setting different time windows for myself that basically it led to me being able to go for longer, right? And let's say you start off, like I said before, you overload it by like, let's say 30 seconds, a minute, 10 minutes, right? And let's say you don't really want to go really past 10 minutes. What I would recommend then is like, okay, congratulations. You made it to 10 minutes before you feel the urge to ejaculate. What I would recommend here, right, is now you pick up the pace. Now you do jerk it a little bit faster, reach that, reach that level of erection that's super hard, super strong, super rigid. You got all kinds of great circulation. You feel that, you conquer the world with this boner. This is the kind of boner you'll make or that you'll use when you're making love, right? This is that type A, this is that A1 erection, right? Now, with this erection, you want to make sure that you can sustain said super hard superhero erection and you can go at a fast pace, right? Because obviously we all know, that there are times where she may want it deeper and harder. And I know that's not every time. I know for a lot of us married guys, we just got to be quiet because the kids are around. But if you are obviously in a position where you like to go at a faster pace when you are making sweet, sweet love and you're having sex, and obviously you want to go hard in the paint, I don't blame you. I love doing it. And I wish the kids weren't around so I could do it longer. More often, I mean. But if you are in a position where obviously you want to train at a harder pace, like let's say this is the equivalent to a heavier weight at the gym, then this is where you really, start focusing more on the rhythm, the stroke, right? Instead of going like at that 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're basically trying to make it to an extended period of time, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? 5, 6, 7. Let's say you pick up the pace to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And let's say you can't make it to 10 minutes this time, because obviously, you know what? It's a different pace. At this point, what you do is you bring it down, right? And let's say you get to 5 minutes. All right, cool. Let's say you killed 5 minutes. Now it's time to bring it up to 6, then 7, then 8, 9, 10. And now you're like, well, I want to go even faster. So you got to be mindful again. Like, what is the tempo? What is the rhythm? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like boom, 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 boom. And for a lot of guys that obviously are just masturbating, for, just to jerk off, usually they're jerking off like that. And that's mainly why they can only last 45 seconds. And if you slow it down, you'll find that you will automatically be able to last longer because you're trying to extend that period, right? And the goal here, guys, is not about jerking off. It's not about coming. It's not about the ejaculation. Your job here is just trying to develop as much stamina as possible, right? From a PE standpoint, I would say the main benefit of edging is that you're trying to get this flaccid hang, to really hang. You slap on a cock ring after a good edging session, and after you've done your hanging or your clamping or your jelking or your whatever pumping, whatever exercise program that you have planned out, right? It will definitely help with that post workout hang. And because you don't come, you trust me, man, your dick is going to be on hard. It's going to be on swole. It's going to be like, oh, I'm pissed off right now, right? Which is good. It's not a bad thing. Obviously, I do know it feels spectacular to release, but this is more about harnessing that energy, right? And so from a PE standpoint, that is the main benefit from edging, is that I find that, you get your good, healthy circulation in. And just for guys, like, let's say you have erectile difficulties or you have problems maintaining a hard erection, this would be a great way to go about it, right? Take out the porn, take out the busting a nut, take out the ejaculations. And let's say you just focus more on just extending this period of time. You're going to have a hard dick for longer. I don't see how that's a bad thing, right? You're basically flexing that muscle. You're flexing that muscle, and in turn, it might even get bigger because of that, right? You're going to have good blood flow coming in. You're going to have good circulation. It's not necessarily that if, you don't use it, you lose it. Actually, it is kind of true. Your penis may atrophy a little for guys that have survived prostate cancer and other things. They have talked about how this is a real thing, right? Like, it can atrophy a little bit, right? The more you use anything, physical, I guess I'm totally going back on what I said, but it is true. You can lose some of the size, some of the functionality, and it is what it is. So this is a great way to just to maintain strong erections, right? So again, going back to different things that you might not be mindful of, you do want to make sure, you just kind of be aware of the fact that, hey man, am I squeezing my anus? Because you almost feel like when you start squeezing it, man, you're like, ah, the next thing you know, you may ejaculate, right? So it's one thing that I got to be mindful of, because I do feel that, and it's one of the important things of making sure that you stay mindful throughout this exercise. The more mindful you are, the more easy it becomes for you to pick up on these different cues. Like, yo, man, I just realized, man, I started squeezing my ass, like, why am I doing that? And you'll really start doing that when you're ready to come, right? You start squeezing that muscle, the Kegel muscle, right? So, and if somebody has an overdeveloped Kegel muscle and ejaculates a lot, it's not good, because that's how premature ejaculation can develop. The good thing is that you can actually reverse that, right? And this is one of the great ways to do that. Also, the other thing to keep in mind is that you want to make sure that you are breathing properly, right? If you're breathing like, usually what happens is that, you're only a step away, a stone's throw away from busting a nut. So in order to avoid that, you want to make sure you're mindful of how you're breathing, You want to make sure you're mindful. Just, you want to breathe from your nose, strong breath, man, strong breath. Just make sure you're breathing. And if you're one of those guys that likes to talk, well, I guess you got to practice talking when you edge. Like, you like that? Oh, like, I mean, if you want to maximize your capabilities, I think it'd probably be important. You want to emulate sex as much as possible. And if you're doing it strictly for the PE purposes, well, you can always talk to just freak out the neighbors. Right? But it is something that we need to be aware of: breathing, squeezing, and just maintaining that mindfulness throughout the whole exercise, which is another thing that I want to touch on briefly before I finish up here. But being mindful, you want to be present in the moment. I'm not a big fan of people that talk about, hey, you want to distract yourself and be thinking about unicorns. You want to be thinking about that fishing trip you had a year ago. I'm not a big fan of that. I want to focus on the fact that I'm balls deep inside of her, and that I am enjoying every inch of this wet pussy, and that my dick is hard when it penetrates, man. Like, I want to make sure I savor this moment for as much as possible, which is why I edge. I want to develop the stamina to extend this moment. I want to make sure that this moment is as beautiful and as long as possible, right? And I'm not a tantric sex practitioner. However, it does seem interesting, and the concept there is obviously, you want to connect on a deeper level. And for me right now, I just want to make love for as long as I possibly can when it is appropriate. And even when it is not appropriate, not that it's inappropriate, but just, let's say I'm limited for time. My job is to make sure that she always comes first, right? You want to make sure she always comes first. You really want to be the alpha male. You really want to be the man of her dreams, and you're busting a nut while, she's barely gotten, heated up. Then I'm sorry, man, that's not the right way to go about it. This is all about personal development. And if you really want to develop yourself to the fullest, you want to be able to control yourself to the fullest, right? And this is one of the ways that we go about doing that. So get your edging in. Edging versus masturbation, masturbation, edging, not the same thing. Similar, however, the outcomes are different. And it's important for us to just take note of what makes them different and how to really focus on harnessing the sexual energy and obviously developing ourselves sexually so that we can have sex the way we want, not the way we don't want, right? And I don't think any guy really wants to be busting a nut in less than 30 seconds in. I don't think you want to ejaculate, while she hasn't even gotten started. She's like, my feet are, I'm not even heated up, honey, and you're already done. It's not a good way to go about it, because I think that if that is the case with anybody, she'll probably be like, well, this guy is just not worth it, right? And all jokes aside, it is a serious matter, but it is something that you are capable of changing, that anybody is capable of changing. And if you do suffer from it, you can reverse it. It is possible. So with that in mind, guys, remember, progressive overload, mind the mental cues, mind the physical cues, and just pay attention to how your body reacts to certain things. Over time, pick up the tempo, pick up the rhythm, make it harder, make it bam, 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 bam. If you're able to do that for 10 minutes, well, congratulations, you're Superman. You probably burn like 1,000 calories, and it is spectacular, deliciousness, nothing better than seeing a beautiful set of butt cheeks just riding on top of you or just hitting it from the back in the booty wave. It is something spectacular. Truly one of the greatest things in creation, I believe. So regardless of what your goals may be, I wish you guys the best, and I hope you guys can apply the principles. Again, send me the DMs on Instagram and let me keep up with how you guys are progressing, about your goals and how everything's going. All right, guys, with that being said, that is the end of today's episode. Stay safe until the next one.